I died and came back. My heart stopped. My body was presumed dead, but my soul was taken to a place that words cannot describe. Hell received me, but heaven came to rescue me. And what happened there will change the way you see life, death, and God. Get ready, because you're going to get goosebumps as this story unfolds. Nothing, absolutely nothing will be the same as before. I grew up surrounded by noise, but inside me, just silence. The TV sound is always on, pans banging in the kitchen, people coming in and out of the house all the time. It was like living in an anthill with 1,000 voices and footsteps around, but none of them addressed me. It was a noisy silence, the worst kind of silence, one that comes not from the absence of sound, but from the absence of attention. I spoke, but no one responded. I cried, but no one listened. I was there, but it was as if I were invisible, an invisible child in the middle of a busy world. My name is Emily Grace, and from an early age I learned that the world doesn't listen to those who feel too much. My father, James Miller, left before I could even speak properly. The only memory I have of him is a photograph, him holding a beer and looking anywhere, except at me. My mother, Catherine, overworked and exhausted, worked all day, and when she got home all she wanted was silence. But it was exactly this silence that destroyed me inside. I remember spending hours in my room, lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, trying to understand why no one asked if I was okay. I was just a kid trying to understand why the world seemed to have forgotten about me. I learned to shut up before I even learned to express myself. A quiet child, they say, is a sign of maturity. But in my case, it was trauma in disguise. Once at school, the teacher asked me why I didn't smile. I didn't know how to answer. How can I explain that smiling, to me, seemed like a lie? I didn't have a hug to remember, not even a good lap memory. Even in the drawings I made, my family had a void in the corner, a blank space where a father should be, or maybe where I should feel loved. I hid behind the curtains when guests arrived. I didn't want questions or conversations. And you know what's curious? The further I got away, the more they seemed to forget about me. It's as if my silence has become routine. One time, my mother forgot me at school. I sat at the gate until night fell. No adults seemed to notice. When she finally showed up, she just said, "I thought you were with your aunt." There was no hug, no excuse, just one person gets in the car dry, like someone closing a door. I started creating imaginary friends, not because it was fun, but because they listened to me. I gave names to old dolls just to have someone to talk to. I did little plays where I was the heroine, not to play, but to escape. The truth is that the real world was too cruel for such a sensitive child, and deep down, I just wanted someone to look at me and say, "You matter." But that sentence never came, not even at Christmas, not even on birthdays, not even on school tickets. And what is cruelest, we grow up believing that this abandonment is normal, that the absence of affection is just life being hard, that love is a luxury and not a right. I grew up thinking that affection was weakness, that asking for attention was a lack, that feeling too much was my defect. And when a child grows up believing this, the adult that is born is someone who is broken inside, even if they seem whole on the outside. For sure, here's a second registration call option, even more emotional, intense, and persuasive, using triggers of pain, hope, curiosity, and community, ideal for retaining the audience and increasing conversions. If at any point in your life you have ever felt lost, rejected, or broken inside, then this video did not come to you by chance. Here, we don't pretend that pain doesn't exist. We face it head-on and show that there is still a path. Sign up now, because what you will hear next could change the way you see life, the past, and even what you believe about God. And more than that, it can show you that you were never alone. This story isn't just about me, it's about us. The first time I felt invisible was when I was 6. The second was when I was touched by someone who said they loved me. I was just a kid with a broken heart, and no one noticed. At 6 years old, all I wanted was to be held. Not expensive toys, not trips, not elaborate parties. I just stick it. A place where I could lay my head and feel that there, in that space, I was safe. But that place never existed. The other children seemed to have refugees. A mother who made coffee, a father who sat on the floor to play, a grandmother who said, "Come here, my dear." I had long silences, closed doors, and looks that always seemed too tired to notice the pain of a girl who couldn't even explain what she felt. And it was into this silence that he entered, A man known to the family, friend of the house, so trustworthy that no one saw a problem when he approached. His name, everyone called him Uncle Rick. He was kind, made jokes, called me Little Princess, and brought sweets. And at first it felt like affection. I, with my needy soul, absorbed every gesture like a hungry child who finally finds a crumb. When he held my hand, I felt special. When he asked me to play separately, I believed I was wanted, but it was a trap, and I had no way of knowing that. The touch happened in the dark hallway of my aunt's house during a family party. People laughing in the living room, loud music in the kitchen, and I was frozen, with my eyes fixed on the wall while something inside me died. It was quick, silent, disguised as a joke, but enough to leave a mark that never left. I remember looking at him, waiting for some kind of explanation, some gesture that said, that was wrong. But he just smiled and motioned for me to be quiet, and I stayed. Because at 6 years old, you believe that adults know what they're doing. And worse, you believe that maybe it's your fault. After that, everything changed. My body became a weight. My smile disappeared from the photos. My grades at school started to drop, but no one associated it with anything. When the teacher called my mother to talk, she just said, "She's too sensitive. She always has been," and the matter died there. The pain, however, was still alive, growing inside me like a weed that suffocates everything that tries to flourish. At night, I curled up in bed. I was afraid of the dark, fear of the sound of footsteps in the hallway, and, more than anything, afraid of myself. I started to develop nervous tics. He bit his nails until they bled. I hid in the closet at my grandmother's house just so I could cry in peace. I once spent more than 2 hours locked inside with a flashlight and a pillow. Nobody looked for me. When I finally left, my mom just said, "Are you still there? I thought you went with your aunt." And at that moment I understood. No one notices. No one wants to see what is hidden behind the eyes of a too quiet child, because seeing demands action, and silence is more comfortable. Over time, my body began to change, but my mind was still that traumatized girl trying to understand what love was. I confused affection with attention. He confused respect with blind obedience. And, for a long time, I accepted all kinds of approaches just to not feel rejected. Because childhood trauma doesn't die over time, it camouflages itself. He wears other clothes, takes on other voices, but he's always there, waiting for the time to speak louder. I didn't know it, but that experience planted the seeds of confusion that would stay with me for years. My identity began to crack. My sense of worth disappeared. And without realizing it, I began to attract everything that confirmed the lie that the abuse implanted, "You are worthless." And when you believe that, you allow yourself to experience anything, even what destroys you. Do you notice how an abuser's touch doesn't end with the body? It enters the soul. It changes the way you see yourself, the way you expect to be treated, and the kind of love you think you deserve. This is why the silence around these issues is so cruel, because while no one talks, thousands of children grow up believing that what happened to them was normal, and it wasn't. It never will be. And this was only the second time I felt invisible. What happened after that completely changed the course of my life. If any part of this story spoke to you, if something awakened difficult memories or feelings, write here in the comments, "I know what it's like." You don't have to tell everything, but know, you are not alone. And just by writing this, you have already begun your own healing journey. At 13, I discovered alcohol. At 14, marijuana. But nothing numbed me, like the pills hidden in the kitchen drawer. The first can of beer was not offered with the intention of hurting. On the contrary, it came as a "try it, just to see what it's like." A banal gesture in a circle of teenagers. But for me, it was revealing. That bitter burning in the throat, followed by a slight dizziness, seemed to open a door that gave access to a world where the pain was silent, where my head stopped spinning with unanswered questions. The alcohol didn't taste good, but the effect, that yes, gave me relief. It was there that the desperate search to erase what consumed me inside began, but what would come later would be even deeper. At 14, curiosity became a necessity. Marijuana appeared naturally, on the streets, in the school hallways, in the circles where I tried to fit in. The first drag was confusing, coughing, eyes watering, heart racing. But then, the laughter came. A laugh that, for the first time in a long time, seemed light, false, but light. The Breeze made me forget what was happening at home, the lack of affection, the erased memories of what was once forcibly taken from me. And when you find a place where the pain goes away, even for a few minutes, you go back there. That's how, without realizing it, I started running away from myself every day, and there was no turning back from the escape. At home, the medicine drawer became my emotional pharmacy. Tranquilizers, painkillers, muscle relaxants, anything that would take me out of the present. I took it secretly, it mixed. I experimented with dosages. I even searched the internet for side effects, but that never stopped me. If it made my heart slow down, if it made my thoughts disappear, I would take it. The problem is, the more I took, the less I felt. And the less I felt, the more I needed to take. It was a silent cycle, invisible to everyone's eyes, even mine. But the line between relief and destruction was getting thinner. I started sneaking out, saying I was going to a friend's house, when in fact I was walking the streets alone, going to parties that I didn't even know owned. It wasn't rebellion, it was loneliness. It was a muffled scream. I needed to be where no one knew me, where I could be anything but myself. In those places I kissed girls, at first to attract attention, then to protect myself from men, and later on, because I started to think that maybe that was my truth. But the truth is, I just wanted to feel like someone saw me, even if it was in a distorted way. The looks gave me what my home never gave, attention. Teasing made me feel important. For a moment, however superficial, I was no longer invisible. Kisses became armor, a way of saying, I control who touches me now. But deep down, I knew that control was just a facade. I was still a 6-year-old girl trying to understand what love was, and repeating in other scenarios the same cycle of abuse. And that's exactly where the danger lies. When pain becomes an identity, you start to believe that you were born to suffer. At 15, I ended up at a party far from home. That night seemed like the others. Loud music, flashing lights, easy drinking, people smiling without joy. But something that night would be different. An older guy, his name was Brandon. With a calm voice, a strong presence, and a look that seemed to read my soul, he approached. Without asking much, he held out his hand with a capsule and said, "It will make you forget everything." I looked at him, and I wanted to believe that forgetting would be the solution. I swallowed without thinking. At that moment, I had no idea what I was about to lose, nor what that would awaken inside me. The effects came quickly. The body became too light. The mind stayed away. I felt like I was floating but falling at the same time. The voices became echoes. The lights were blurred. My own name sounded distant. I lost my ground, literally and emotionally. I don't know how I ended up in the room. I don't remember how my clothes were changed. I just remember the feeling of being empty, of something being ripped out of me. And in that void, a shadow was born that would accompany me for years. But that wasn't rock bottom yet. If you've ever tried to run away from yourself, if you've ever sought relief where you only found pain, comment here. I understand. Sometimes all we need is to know that we are not alone. Your story can start to restore the moment you share. Let's go together. A comment can be the first step to healing. Loneliness that night felt different. It wasn't just the absence of people, it was the absence of myself. It was as if I had disappeared inside. The silence in the apartment did not bring peace. He screamed. He was shouting things that I had been trying to keep quiet about for years. The dim light from the television flickered in the window's reflection, and the sound of the wind hitting the blinds seemed to mock my presence. I was there, and at the same time, I wasn't there anymore. Sometimes we don't decide to die, we just want to stop feeling. And that night, everything in me screamed for an end. My ex's words echoed like a curse. You destroy everything you touch. Laura always had an acidic way of speaking, but that night it was different, and I, as always, believed. I had heard similar phrases before, from my mother, from friends, from family members, but that time it sounded like a sentence. And the worst, I couldn't disagree. Broken relationships, broken promises, hidden vices, scars I left on myself and others. It felt like I really was the root of the chaos, and when you believe that your existence only generates pain, death seems like a relief, even a form of pity. But the most dangerous thing about believing that you are the problem is when you decide to also be the final solution. I opened the kitchen drawer with firm hands and an anesthetized heart. I had done this before, but never in such quantities. I collected All kinds of pills. Tranquilizers, painkillers, sleeping pills. I mixed it with the rest of the cheap vodka I had in the bottle. I didn't even know if that was enough. I just knew it needed to be. My body no longer mattered. Emotional pain screamed louder than any survival instinct. No one imagines how much a bottle and half a dozen pills can carry so much history, so much scream, so much silent cry for help. The cruelest thing was the calm. There was no dramatic scene, not even tears, just a strange kind of peace. That peace of extreme tiredness which feels like a relief, but it's just the body giving up. I lay down on the living room floor with the glass in my hand, the bitter mouth, the numb mind, and eyes fixed on the ceiling. A roof that for years was my only confidant. A ceiling that saw me grow, cry, collapse, and now it seemed like the last thing I would see. There, on the cold ground for the first time, I didn't feel afraid, just absence, just an even deeper silence. I remember seeing the TV lights scramble, feeling your heart beat slower, as if every beat was a goodbye. I closed my eyes without thinking about anyone, not even in God, not even my mother, not even me. I just wanted it to stop, let the weight come off. May the pain give up on me before I give up on everything. But what I didn't know is that in that exact second that my soul seemed to black out, something far beyond my understanding was about to happen. Because sometimes the end we plan is not the end God allows. There was no ambulance, there was no immediate help. From the outside it looked like the end, but inside something was moving. It was as if physical reality had left me behind and I was being carried away. I don't know how to explain if it was a dream, hallucination, spirit, death, or everything together. But what I saw, I will never forget, because there, in that darkness, something or someone was waiting for me. And that presence didn't come with judgment, but with authority. An authority that neither addiction nor trauma nor death could silence. The body remained there, lying down. But me, I was pulled out of myself. I floated without knowing where. Time stopped. The space didn't make sense. I no longer felt physical pain, but such a great spiritual weight, as if all the mistakes, addictions, and sins in my life had become a real burden. I carried everything, and it dragged me down to a place that I couldn't name, but I had already heard about. Him. And if you think hell is just a metaphor, it's because you've never come too close to your own destruction. Have you ever felt like you've reached the end of the line? Have you ever had a night so dark that there seemed to be no return? If so, comment here. I've been to that place. You don't need to have all the words now, just the courage not to hide it anymore. Sometimes what saves us is simply being seen, and here you will be. The moment I woke up, I knew something was terribly wrong. It was not a physical awakening. It was as if my consciousness had been ejected from my body. I didn't see my face, my hands, my body, but I knew I was there, present, conscious, completely awake, and in a place that didn't belong to the world of the living. The air was heavy. The darkness wasn't like turning off a light. It was alive, suffocating, dense. It seemed to wrap around me like a sticky blanket, which stuck to my soul and dragged everything down. And even though I had never been there before, something in me screamed, "This place is real." And I wasn't invited, I was attracted. I didn't hear sounds. I felt the sounds. The screams went through my mind like razors. There were cries of regret, screams of agony, human voices transformed into deformed echoes of despair. I saw burning bodies, but they weren't bodies like ours. They were shadows, enveloped in fire, but not consumed by it. The fire did not destroy. He kept it. It kept the pain alive. Every inch of that place seemed designed to amplify the suffering and the worst. I knew none of this was an exaggeration. It was punishment. It was justice, and it seemed eternal. My feet, or what I thought were my feet, sank into a moving floor. It was as if I was stepping on flesh, in living mud, a floor that breathed, that contorted, as if it took pleasure in seeing me there. And suddenly, I felt as if invisible hooks had lassoed me. Chains, frozen like guilt, began to pull me under, not with physical strength, but with the weight of my choices. And that's when I heard it. Voices, multiple, sarcastic, precisely cruel, as if they've known me forever. And in fact, they knew. You had chances, and you wasted them all. That sentence didn't sound like an accusation. It sounded like a verdict, like the final seal of a long-decreed sentence. Voices laughed, mocked, called me by names I had forgotten existed. Lie, rejected, immoral, dirty. It was as if every label I received, an inverted spiritual court, where the judge had already decided and the only empty chair was that of hope. And then, like a nightmare beyond the limits of sanity, a face appeared, deformed, rotted, but alive, with eyes that seemed to pierce through me, and a smile that didn't express joy but dominance, as if to say, "I knew you would come." He approached slowly, whispering words that weren't whispers. They were knives. "Here is forever." These 3 words didn't just scream. In the surroundings, they screamed inside me, as if they echoed throughout my history, as if they had been written in everything I had experienced up to that point. And there, for the first time, I didn't cry with sadness. I definitely cried. Certainly it was too late. I believed my story was over, not like in a movie, not with open endings, but with a final point, the kind of period that bleeds, that burns. How heavy. And there was no light, there was no time, there was no prayer, there was just falling. But when the weight became unbearable, when I no longer had the soul to scream, that's when it happened. A flash, not by color, not in a way, but presence. A presence that didn't scream, that he didn't force, which it simply was. As if in the middle of the eternal sentence someone had invaded the trial. A light appeared, small at first, but firm. She didn't fight the darkness. She just existed, and because she existed, she dominated, and the darkness receded. It was there that my soul, fragmented, torn apart, began to feel something I hadn't known for a long time, relief. But not the chemical relief of pills. It was a relief that didn't come from me. It was like something was coming through me. And what happened in that moment, even without words, told me, it's not over yet. Do you believe that hell exists? Ever feel like you're in a place that's too dark to leave? Comment below. I want light, even if you don't know how to pray, even if you don't know what you believe. Sometimes the first step to liberation is simply admitting that it needs to be found. I was never good at praying. I never learned to talk to God like they do in services. I didn't know memorized verses or gospel songs. But at that moment, none of those things mattered. The only thing I had left was a scream coming from the depths of the soul, a scream that pierced the darkness like thunder in the silence. Jesus, if you are real, get me out of here. It was the cry of a broken soul without faith, without strength, without anything, but who still dared to call out the name that is above every name. What happened next wasn't immediate like in the movies. It didn't come with triumphal music. For a few seconds, which seemed eternal, the silence was total, almost as if hell had held its breath. But then, an explosion, not sound, not violence, but of light. A light that didn't hurt the eyes. She healed. She invaded every dark corner without asking for permission, as if she had authority over everything. It was as if I had been invaded by his presence, even though I had never truly invited him before. That light seemed alive. It wasn't just brightness. It was someone. It was a look. It was a hug. It was like 1,000 arms were around me at once, and they were all saying, "You're safe now." I cried, but not from fear. I cried with relief, because for the first time since the world broke me, someone was putting me back together, without judging me. It was as if Jesus was saying, "I saw it all, and yet I came to get you." And that was stronger than any addiction. The darkness receded. The voices fell silent. The deformed face that tormented me disappeared like smoke. The weight of the chains disappeared. And then the voice came. It wasn't like that of an ordinary man. It was serious but gentle. It was firm, but full of tenderness. It sounded like thunder, and at the same time, like whispering. It was the voice that the world tried to silence in me my entire life. And now she called me by the name that no one else knew. Daughter. Daughter, you didn't die by accident. I called you here to give you a choice. At that moment, everything made sense. Suicide attempts, the void, the destroyed relationships, the overdose, the tears, the loneliness. None of this was random. It was as if he had allowed me to reach rock bottom, not to lose me for good, but to show me that even there, he could reach me. And instead, self-condemning me, he extended his hand, a hand that bled for me. And now, he offered me life. I didn't see his face, but I saw his mercy. I didn't see eyes, but I felt his gaze inside me. He knew me completely. I knew everything. And even then, it gave me a choice. He didn't force me, he didn't scream, he just asked with love, "Do you want to live?" And at that moment, for the first time in my life, I wanted it. In truth. Have you ever had a moment when you felt like only a miracle could save you? Have you ever called the name of Jesus in despair? If so, or if you want to do this now, comment here, "Jesus, I need you." It may be the simplest sentence of your life, but it may be the most powerful. Someone will read it and identify with it, and all heaven will hear. He showed me scenes from my life, the times he protected me, even though I denied him, the times he whispered in my heart, and I ignored it. And yet, he called me his daughter. His presence didn't accuse me, it revealed me. Like a film projected into the invisible, I saw forgotten moments, moments when I thought I was alone, and now I realized he was there. When I was almost run over as a child, when I first thought about cutting myself, when I took more pills than I should have, I thought I had survived by luck. But it wasn't luck, it was mercy. It was him keeping me, even without being invited to stay. Every time I ignored that something inside me, saying it won't go in there. It was him, the spirit whispering in the midst of the chaos. And yet, I rejected him. I turned my back. I pretended I didn't hear. And now there, in the place between the end and a new beginning, he brought it not as an accusation, but as a witness to a love that never gave up. Love that doesn't expect perfection, just willingness. Love that doesn't scream, but never shuts up. And even after so much silence on my part, he called me in the sweetest and most powerful way. "Daughter." I fell to my knees. "Why does the Lord love me so much?" And he replied, "Because I created you, and I never gave up on you." There, on that spiritual floor that wasn't a floor, I collapsed. Not because of weakness, but because my heart could no longer resist. The chains were no longer there, but still I knelt, out of reverence, for brokenness, by delivery. The weight was no longer that of hell, it was that of glory, and the glory weighs, but it is a healing. The question escaped my soul without rehearsal. Why does the Lord love me so much? And the answer didn't come with thunder or spectacle. She came with the voice that seemed to stitch together every broken part of me. "Because I created you, and I never gave up on you." These words were not heard with the ears, they were imprinted on the spirit, and in that moment, everything that previously made sense fell apart, and everything I thought was impossible became palpable. Redemption did not arrive like magic. It arrived as a recognition of origin. I wasn't just a mistake trying to survive, I was a daughter, chosen, planned, rescued. If you've ever wondered why God still loves you after everything he's done, if you ever thought that he gave up on you, comment below. I am also his child, because sometimes all he needs is an opening and a willing heart. And who knows, this comment will be the beginning of your return home. Heartbeat returns. Monitor sounds, doctors' voices. "She's back, she's alive!" The sound of the monitor cut through the silence of the room like thunder. Whistles, hurried footsteps, hands shaking with relief. The body that seconds before was cold, inert, now pulsed with life. 7 minutes. 7 minutes without heartbeat. 7 minutes without breathing. 7 minutes in which human eyes said, "It's over." But the heavens decided, "Not yet." That scene that seems to only exist in movies happened to me, and it wasn't the effect of medication, nor was it the result of chance. It was a miracle. No pulse, no breathing, but I'm back. I came back from a place where screams never stop, from an abyss that swallows you inside. I came back with my eyes more open than ever. The body is still weak, but the soul lit. It wasn't just the feeling of being alive, it was the conviction that someone had pulled me back with their own hands, someone stronger than death, and that someone had a name. Jesus. The doctors couldn't explain it. One of them, as he left the room, said quietly, "There are things that science cannot achieve." But I knew. I went down there, and I was snatched back by a voice that called me daughter. After that, there were no more doubts, no internal debates, no emotional shields. Jesus is real, and he didn't just see me, he wanted me back, gave me one more chance. I left the hospital thirsty for life, thirsty for God. The air I breathed now had a different flavor. The water seemed more alive, daylight, more intense. Even the floor seemed firmer. I didn't leave that hospital just with a medical discharge, and I left with a mission. I needed to seek, know, surrender. It wasn't about religion, it was about recognition. He loved me first. He saw me in the dust, in the error, in the mud, and he still chose me. How can I not seek him back with everything I am? Do you believe that God still gives second chances? Have you ever felt like someone caught you when you were falling? Comment here. I believe in miracles. I returned to church. I broke my alliances with the occult. I broke pacts. I donated everything that connected me to the past. Stepping back into a church was like walking through a portal, not physical, but spiritual. Every step towards the door seemed to carry 1,000 voices saying, "You don't belong here. This isn't for you." But I got in, and it was there, between simple praises and eyes closed in prayer, that I felt something that no drug, relationship, or occult ritual had ever given me: true peace. It wasn't about religion, it was about redemption, and that requires confrontation. I came home, looked at my drawers, my hidden boxes. I broke crystals, tore up letters, burned consecrated incense. I deactivated amulets, cleared playlists, deleted contacts. I cried while doing this, not because of attachment to things, but because of the break with what kept me stuck. It was as if each object said, "You'll never get out of this." But my answer was clear. I've already left, and I was baptized. In the water I felt my past sink, and my spirit emerges. Baptism was not just a symbolic act. It was a funeral, a burial of what I was. When I entered that water, I took with me memories, traumas, addictions, lies and weights that were no longer mine. And when I left, it was like breathing for the first time. It wasn't just water in the body, it was freedom in the soul. I remember closing my eyes, and for the first time, not being afraid of the dark. Because now, there was light inside me. The same light that pulled me from the abyss now shone for me, and that light had needed to be carried forward. Today I am a wife, mother, disciple of other women. I bring the same light that rescued me to those who are still in darkness. I never imagined that one day I would say these words. I, Emily Grace, who was invisible, abused, addicted, suicidal. Today I walk with purpose. The love that I begged for, today I give. The protection I lacked, today I offer. Not on my merit, but because he gave me a new identity. I am the wife of a man who loves me patiently, mother of children who will not inherit my pain, but my faith, and discipler of women who, like me, thought it was too late. And you know what I love doing most? To look into the eyes of someone in ruins and say, I know what it's like, and there is hope. Have you ever experienced a spiritual rebirth? Have you ever had to give up things from the past to live God's new life? Comment here. I also left the old man behind. This simple comment can be a spark of light for someone who is still struggling in the dark, and you can be living proof that starting over is possible. You don't need to die to live what I lived. You just need to call on Jesus. I went through death to find life, but you don't have to go that far. You don't have to wait for rock bottom, the last dose, the last tear, the last breath. The door is open. The name still has power, and he still listens. Maybe all you have left is a whisper, and believe me, that's enough for him to act. If you feel like you're at rock bottom, if addiction dominates you, if no one else believes in you, Jesus still believes, and he is calling you now. You're not watching this by chance. Someone prayed for you, someone cried for you, and today you are being reached. It doesn't matter how far you fall. It doesn't matter what they did to you. Heaven still has a plan with your name written on it, and this is your chance to respond with faith, with one click, with a delivery. Comment now, Jesus changed my life. If you want to give your heart to him today, it doesn't matter who you were until now. It matters who you are willing to become. Share this video with someone you love and who maybe is one step away from giving up. You can be the link between pain and miracle. Subscribe to the channel now and turn on notifications to hear more real stories of liberation, healing, and transformation. Because the miracle will come to your life